Dhammayatra is a Hindi term for pilgrimage, meaning the visiting and honoring of holy sites. In Buddhism, King Ashoka is considered to be the father of the Dhammayatra. He was born about 300 years after the Buddha. He was known as Ashoka the Great not only because of his worldly power, but also because of his virtuous human qualities. He fought many wars in his early years, and he extended his kingdom until it reached over almost the whole Indian subcontinent. Upon seeing the horrors of war, he later became a convert and patron of Buddhism and depicted its messages of nonviolence and loving-kindness onto stone pillars. He built many stupas, and under the guidance of his spiritual teacher, the monk Upagupta, traveled to all places of significant events in the Buddha's life. At each place he erected a pillar and made inscriptions so that later generations could recognize these places. In order to revive the Ashokan tradition of the Dhammayatra, the Watsangatans group of pilgrims, on the 14th of December 2009, set out on foot following a route often walked by the Buddha himself. Bodh Gaya. It was here that the Buddha subdued Mara and attained the perfectly complete enlightenment. Though at first doubtful, the Buddha, out of compassion for all beings, decided to teach the Dhamma that he realized. About 13 kilometers from Bodh Gaya is Dungashuri Cave, where the Buddha practiced austerities for 6 years prior to his enlightenment. It is said that the cave self-manifested in order to receive the Buddha to be. A little further is the city of Gaya, which was often visited by the Buddha. Here he mysteriously left a footprint in basalt stone at a place today called Vishnupad. A little outside of Gaya is Brahmayoni. Here the Buddha taught the famous fire sermon to the 1,000 Madhya ascetics who upon hearing it became enlightened. It was also from here that the Buddha declared that it's not by ritual bathing that one becomes purified, but by adherence to truth and to the Dhamma. From Gaya, the road goes on to Rajgir. About 10 kilometers outside from Rajgir is a place called Vastivana. Here, King Bimbisara, together with 120,000 Brahmin householders, went to receive the Buddha when he first came to Rajgir. The Buddha gave them the 5 precepts and thus all became Buddhists. It was the first time the Buddha gave the 5 precepts to lay people. The city of Rajgir is often mentioned in the scriptures as a place frequented by the Buddha and his disciples. It was the capital of the kingdom of Magda, which was ruled by King Bimbisara. It was also one of the principal spiritual centers in India in those days. Many of the places around Rajgir mentioned in the suttas can still be visited today. For example, Weluwana Monastery or Bamboo Grove. This was the first Buddhist monastery in the world. It was offered by King Bimbisara to the Buddha to make it easier for his devotees to visit him. It was here that the Buddha gave the Awata Patimokkha to 1,250 arahants who had assembled spontaneously without any previous arrangements. Besides offering the Buddha the Weluwana Grove, King Bimbisara built a kuti on Gichakuta Hill or Vulture's Peak with a breathtaking view over the entire valley. Here the Buddha delivered the Lotus Sutra, a discourse of utmost importance to Mahayana Buddhists, and it was also here that his foremost disciple, Venerable Sariputta, became free of all taints without clinging. A little further down the hill is Jiwakam Ravana Monastery, built by the Buddha's personal physician, Jiwaka. Bimbisara's jail is a place called so because it was supposedly here that Prince Ajatasattu imprisoned and killed his father in order to take over the throne. It is said that King Bimbisara could see the Buddha meditating on Vulture's Peak through his prison windows, which gave him some relief from his suffering. The Satadhara hot springs were known for their healing power since ancient times and were often visited by monks who lived in that area. The Saptapani Caves is a place where the first Buddhist council was held about 6 months after the death of the Blessed One. 500 arahants, with Venerable Mahakassapa as their leader, gathered here to codify the teachings so that they wouldn't become lost. A day's walk from Rajgir is Nalanda, foremostly known for its famous university. But it was also here that the Buddha's two main disciples, Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamokkallana, were born and grew up. Nalanda University was, in its days, the largest university in the world, with over 10,000 students, 3,000 teachers, and a library with over 9 million manuscripts, before it got destroyed by the Muslims in the year 1193 AD. Monks and lay people would study here, and many Mahayana sects can trace their origins back to this place. Patna is the modern capital of Bihar and is the largest city in the state. It lies at the banks of the Ganges River. Formerly, it was known as Pataliputta, and it was the capital of Magda. From here, King Ashoka built up and ruled his great empire. Here at his palace, King Ashoka also organized the Third Buddhist Council. Once a place of splendor, it had an 80-pillared pavilion. There is not much left of it today. It sits in the Victorian-styled garden. Crossing the Ganges, we leave the kingdom of Magda and enter the land of the Lashavis with its capital at Vaisali. Like Rajgir, Vaisali was often visited by the Buddha and his disciples. It is said when the Blessed One first set foot on the soil of Vaisali, loud thunder, followed by a heavy downpour, purged the plague-infected city. It was also here that the first 500 nuns were ordained into the order. And it was also here that the Buddha spent his last wasa, or rains retreat. At the assembly hall, the Buddha gave Dhamma discourses to the Lashavis, especially the famous Ratana Sutta, upon which hearing it, 84,000 people embraced the new faith. After the Buddha's cremation, his remains were divided into 8 equal portions and shared to the kings and leaders who had been followers of the Buddha during his lifetime. The Buddha relic stupa at Vaisali is one of the original 8 stupas in which the Blessed One's remains were kept. At Mahawana Monastery, the Buddha gave his last sermon. He reminded the monks that his whole teachings are encapsulated in the 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhammas, classified under 7 groups. To commemorate this event, King Ashoka erected one of his pillars here. It is one of the few Ashoka pillars left, which survived almost undamaged through the centuries. The way from Vaisali to Kushinagar is well described in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the discourse on the last journeys of the Buddha. The first stop along the way, Kesariya, located about 65 kilometers north of Vaisali. It was here that the Buddha took leave of the reluctant Lichavi devotees, whom he gave his alms bowl and some hair pieces. To house them, they built a small earthen stupa, which was later greatly enlarged by Emperor Ashoka, and it was probably the largest stupa of its day. From Kesariya, the Buddha and his monks journeyed northward until he came to the city of Kava. There the goldsmith Channa invited the Blessed One to eat at his house. It was going to be the Buddha's last meal. The food Channa offered was unintentionally poisoned and it made the Lord seriously ill. Channa was overcome by grief, but the Buddha comforted him by saying that the merit of offering the last meal to a Buddha is very high indeed, and Channa, through this deed, would reach the heavenly realms. Seriously ill, the Buddha traveled on. From a river where they had stopped to rest, the Buddha told Ananda to get some water in order to wash and to drink. Ananda was reluctant because just prior to their arrival, 500 ox carts had passed through the river, making it very muddy. But the Buddha told Ananda to get some anyway, and after doing so, the water became mysteriously clear. After the rest, the group continued walking. When they reached Kushinagar, they found a pair of 2 sala trees, which were, unusual to the season, blossoming over. The Buddha declared that he would enter final nirvana here, so the monks prepared a bed for him under the trees. Then the Buddha lay down with his head pointed to the north. After giving final instructions to his disciples and the gathered gods, he entered final nirvana. Today at this spot there is a stupa and a vihara with a lying Buddha image inside to remind us of this event, and thousands of Buddhas come here every year to pay their respect and to contemplate on the Buddha's final utterance. If there's birth, there's death. All conditioned things are of a nature to decay. Be diligent in your efforts to attain liberation. Further down the road is the Makuta Bandhana Chedi, which marks the place where the Buddha's body was cremated 7 days after his nirvana. The master's body was washed and robed and placed in a casket of precious substances. The cremation fire was then lit by the Venerable Mahakassapa, who arrived just on that day. Another place worth visiting within Kushinagar is the Mata Kuar Shrine. There are the remains of an old monastery and an elongated dark blue stone image of the Buddha sitting in the Bhumiparsa Mudra position, touching the earth.